Hello everybody, in today's video I'm going to show you how you can take every cheap object and turn it into a premium expensive design. So this is the overview of the lessons, right? So in my last video, or in one of my last videos, I was talking about the psychological ways that luxury is embedded in the product design, which included effort heuristics, embodied cognition, right? Processing fluency, all these things. But today I want to talk about the embodied ways to do that, right? So you already see it's quite a lot. And I don't know if I would be able to apply all of them, but I just give it a try. And then at the end, we can see and compare if my design actually looks more premium than the object. So it's like slender proportions, dark and saturated, desaturated colors, surface continuity, balance, right? Beauty gaps, weight distribution. And the object of my choosing for this challenge is the laundry basket, because I think this one is very utilitarian, right? It's highly functional, super cheap. Usually it's from plastic and edges are not even cleaned or anything. It's straight out of the mold, more or less. It feels like it. Feels cheap. And I think there we might get to see like a big improvement overall. And for this experiment, I will just try to stay within Viscom so I don't have to jump back and forth between different programs. Okay, so start with the first thing. Psychology of luxury, slender proportions, right? So long, slim, tall proportions are associated with elegance, refinement, and exclusivity, right? And there were also studies even that looked into the golden ratio and elongated proportions and found that these are rated more elegant and graceful than, let's say, more compact or tighter proportions. And I think a good example is these bottles on the right. They are Japanese made from like the past, really like quite a while ago, I guess. And I feel like just by making this shape a little bit more slender, it looks more premium than the upper one, right? This is a little bit rougher around the edges, a little bit more weighty. Maybe that's something already we can apply to our laundry basket. And I think the variation tool here is perfect. So let's see just how the different extremes look in the corners, short and wide, tall and wide, and short and thin. And then maybe we will be able to find like a sweet spot. All right, so this guy is very thin and very tall. This one is very wide and very short. It looks almost like the original one. This one is very wide and very tall, and this one is very thin and very short. Not so thin, if you ask me. Then I would say, let's try here to have it, let's say, a little bit thinner than this, but deeper. Maybe I should put slim. And let's see what the difference will be. All right, so this is thin and tall. I think maybe a little bit too tall. I don't want to make it like a really deep, inconvenient to carry. So let me take this. It is longer than the original one, and I don't want to go like too far from the original so it stays comparable. So that is why I take this guy. Then one of the next things is the psychology of luxury is dark and desaturated, right? So premium products often use black or graphite colors, deep blues, gold, silver, or muted earth tones. And we already also learned in one of my previous videos about color psychology and the power of color, that there is like a certain emotional association that we have with certain colors. And black conveys authority and power and mystery as well. Also, dark surfaces hide imperfections better than white ones, right? So even if there are some imperfections, if you make it dark, then they're not as prominent on the surface, right? So they emphasize more strongly the silhouette and the overall shape. Luxury companies, they also avoid using trendy colors, so there's no trend fatigue, right? That's also why all these premium brands usually just go for the classics. White, black, maybe some earth tones, and that's about it. All right, so make this dark and saturated. That's easy. All right, this is in black. I think this is usually like has a huge impact. Making it something black immediately changes the overall impression, perception dramatically, I feel. Next thing would be micro textures, the psychology of luxury in micro textures. Okay, so micro textures means that in luxury objects, we usually see like diffusing and non-reflective surfaces, right? Matte, metals, soft touch plastics, like materials that invite to touch them, that have a certain tactility to them. They are not overly flashy and hyper glossy. Gloss suggests mass market flashiness, so we try to avoid that one. So I think in this example, I think it's a nice contrast. We have this matte soft touch thing, and we have a somewhat higher gloss, but it's deliberate and it's like very to the back. It's not shouting. It's not like, oh, I'm glossy all over the place. Can we do this matte black? It's already not all too glossy, but looks pretty much like it did, right? Not too much of a change. Maybe there's also some things in terms of branding that we can do and come back to this later on. But for now, let's see what the next step would be. So the next thing would be material authenticity, right? If the product has certain weight and texture to it, it feeds into our perception of it. Like also if it's dense and weighty, right? Like embodied cognition in the previous video, they suggest premium or value worth, right? Also, materials can communicate something about the heritage, the tradition, the way it was made. All these things add to our perception of value. And I think what we can do here now to add just handles from a material that are valuable, but also I'm not sure if the combination of these is sufficient. So as a secondary step, I will do so let's change this into a dark wood material. All right, I think this actually helped. It looks a little bit better, even though the plastic is a little bit too wacky. So let's see how it looks from wood. I mean, that's definitely an upgrade to me. Next thing is surface continuity. So premium forms exhibit continuous curvature, soft transitions, and tense surfaces rather than abrupt edges. So smooth flow is perceptually fluent. Curvature and curved angular shapes activate the brain regions linked to safety and pleasure, which is interesting. But I have the sources linked here, right? So check it out if you don't believe me. I don't know if it links to every object type, right? But at least apparently for some objects, it was found to have an impact. But also I think there's a curvature, but it's not just like a sphere or bubbly all over. It's like subtle and sharp, and there's tension. I think tension is better than just round. So I'm not sure how we can modify that. So from my first try, okay, we straighten things out. I think that actually is not all that bad. This one works even better to me, a little bit more subtlety, even though it's not really doing the point that I'm suggesting, right, with the curvature and fluency. But okay, let's see what we get here. So this is a little bit too sharp, and this is, if you compare it with the original. Yeah, so I think this is actually a good candidate. This is interesting. I like it. It sort of integrated the handles in a more natural way, right? Soft surface transitions rather than this abrupt edge. I will just try how this one looks if I make it a little bit more round. So we had this, and it gave us a little bit more rounding here and there, yes, but it kept the sharp edges. So overall, I would say it's quite successful. So let's compare these. Yeah, what I like about this one is that it feels a little bit more handcraft, artisanal, right? Because this is not just, so this is for me going even further. This one is definitely better when it comes to this specific point, curvature, fluency, surface transitions, right? But this one I think does a better job in creating something that looks more valuable. So I would go with this one, asymmetrical balance. So apparently luxury design tends to be balanced, but not perfectly symmetric. So controlled asymmetry reads intentional, right? It feels like confident also. Okay, so what am I going to do here now? Or should I form variate? Symmetric, asymmetric. It's just a single component, right? I think functionally it doesn't make sense to make it all that asymmetrical. I mean, we could just have one side here to be flat, maybe, which is the side that you put against your body when you carry it, like with one hand. I think this is interesting, yeah. Another one, I like this one, but I think I would want it to be straight here to match the other side. So it's asymmetric in this layer or this dimension, but not in every single direction. Yeah, I think that's the one. Right, so again, I'm just trying to now basically fulfill all the different points. I don't think that's how I would usually go about making something more premium. It doesn't have to fulfill every single thing, right? You just want to think about those things when you are trying to improve the overall perception of value for an object, but it's not like you try to bash 14 or I don't know how many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 aspects into a single design, right? So we might overload it, make it like over premium so it looks already like art, or cheap again, but you can go too far, like being too bold with the stuff. Weight distribution, all right. Heavy or visually grounded products feel more expensive. We already also learned that about in the embodied cognition section. Weight means importance. So people literally take things that are heavy as being more important than things that are light. And the massing is expected to match that weight distribution, right? So the flamenco here looks a little bit wonky and dangerously thin on the leg, while the entire weight is resting on top. So it works while this is in balance, but just push it slightly and the thing falls, right? What can we do in terms of weight distribution? I mean, this looks already pretty stable to me. Let's see if it helps to reduce the draft angle a little bit. But overall, I feel already this looks very stable, right? It doesn't feel to me like unbalanced or unstable, or gives me a wrong perception of the masking. It's already quite successful in that. But maybe if we do these lines a little bit straighter, because this is wood, it's not injection molded anymore, right? We don't have to have the draft. Is there a perspective warp tool? There is some transformation tool, right? Warp. Okay, let's now compare again. Does it look better or worse? Does it look more premium? Yeah, to be honest, I like that there is some directionality to this whole thing. It looks less static than this guy. Does that mean premium? Not necessarily. This is like a static object, right? It's not supposed to be fast. So just for the sake of this tutorial, let's keep it, because I try to put now everything in this one thing. But I mean, you get the gist, right? You don't have to follow all the steps here. So the next thing is hidden assembly. So visible fasteners, joints, or unnecessary decoration reduce the perceived luxury. So can we find ways to hide the joints, which increase the assumption of craftsmanship, right? There's these cool videos of Japanese woodworking where they have these hidden connections or like very well shaped, perfect fit things. But also for objects, obviously, like usually there's one side from a 2/2 mold piece, right? There's all these screw holes, and the other side is clean, which is the visible front face. But ideally, like in this example from B&O, they have everything hidden underneath, so it looks super clean. And that also there's a lot of thought being put into these things, right? For us, there's not that much assembly happening. I mean, this is, already stated, right, that if you were to do this from a single block, you had a lot of waste. I don't think that's what luxury means. That's just wasteful. We have indicated here the different lines of how things connect, but they integrate more or less seamlessly. Yeah, I'm not sure what else we could do. I mean, now we have here some mess ups with the pattern, but apart from that, assembly, we could make sure that the bark, what is it called? The traces, the direction of the wooden texture is going in the same direction, so we don't have these strong visible lines. It was supposed to mask it, right? I'm not sure if it went too far, because now this looks again like from a single piece. I will just try to just roughly add some seams back in here. Yeah, I think now it's at least more tangible. Take it and move on, just for the sake of it. The next one is the beauty gap. Okay, so I mean that's basically what we did, same thing. But like what you see with very cheap objects is that they are just built in such a way that the lines touch, right, the objects, and then there are some tolerances that have to be considered, and there's also some imperfections around the edges. So some sections will be just a little bit off, some will be touching, some will be wider gaps. So if they're perfectly aligned and not as precise in the manufacturing, then you will see just like a messy gap. So what helps is to create an intentional gap, and then these imperfections are less obvious, and you create a more premium perception and very clean impression of the design. So I think that's something you see here in the details. You see here at the top, you basically see in all the common electronics. So here's maybe a good example for why this is cheap. So you see that on the left, it's very much bigger than it is on the front. So that makes us wonder, like, why is that the case? And in comparison, we have this Logitech mouse, right? And there, the gap here is much more uniform, also at the top. So that is a big indicator for precision in handcraftship and quality assessment. So I mean, we added a gap now. So that was more or less related to our previous assignment. We have clean gaps. So I will not use this step to actually add another gap because we already did that. Then we have psychology of negative space, right? So high-end designs use more empty space around the elements. They are not afraid to just let the object be the center and have nothing else around it. But also in terms of graphics, they're much more confident in just placing a graphic and not plastering every single edge with more information and more something happening, right? Space is expensive, also in terms of advertising, right? So leaving it unused indicates confidence and restraint. And we also see that a lot in Japanese design composition. They also use a lot of negative space and asymmetry, which is interesting. So with negative space, we improve the focus on the essentials and convey calm authority, right? Yeah, we can just compositionally improve this by creating more negative space here in how it's represented. We don't have a logo on there yet, but we should probably add a logo. So what should be the logo? Okay, here I am back again. So this is my logo. And maybe we can go in here and first of all, increase the space around this whole thing. Yes. And then let's take this guy, make it smaller and say, where do we place it? At the corner? I think I'll put it at the front. Okay, interesting selection. Did exactly not what I wanted. Better. Precision and consistency. High tolerances, aligned radii, uniform transitions, signal discipline and control. Our brains read that as high quality, right? So and if that is applied consistently across multiple different products, even more so, it does speak for quality and precision, and it puts further quality on it puts further emphasis on the value that the manufacturers give the precision and the details, right? Also, tight tolerances are really expensive because depending on how tight the tolerances are, you have to be much more careful in the handling of your tools. You have to be slower, and inspection needs to be more often. So that is really a cost factor also, right? So I think we can do something cool with this precision. I think about the patterns on the side, right? So now I think these would definitely indicate some sort of precision manufacturing, right? So let's see how we go. Take this guy. We also take this guy. All right, I should have done maybe landscape. This one's pretty nice, actually. Also that it added more perforation on that side, but left the logo blank. Also looks nice and clean. This one's also pretty cool. That's actually a cool effect that you have some sort of something in between. All right, so these are the results, right? So let's have a look again. So this was what we started with. This was the alternative path. And this is where we ended up as. So I just made this one as a more direct comparison from plastic and black that already does a lot, right? The shape also did transition of this edge here. That helps a lot. Applying like a different pattern. I think overall this looks definitely more premium. I think the asymmetry doesn't help in that regard in this example. And from wood, just from the materiality, I think it works, but maybe not as practical for this specific example. Also, there's a lot of humidity, right? So maybe it's not always clear how wood reacts with the humidity. And then, because I wasn't sure if the long one would actually lend itself better for this, and I feel like if it is longer, it does already look more premium, right? This one compared to this one works better. This one to this one even better. All right, I went back in to do some further refinements. I wasn't quite happy with the result, right? So this is where we started. Then this is the black plastic premium version of it and the wooden one that we had. So I already mentioned that I am not quite happy with the asymmetry applied here the way it is. It looks a little bit strange. So I straightened the edges again, and I think that looks much cleaner and still much more premium than the original one. I did that for both, even though I feel like just functionally wise, it doesn't make sense to make this a heavy wood one in that size specifically. But I further went in there and felt like we could add some finesse to the whole thing with giving it a second layer. So the outside is nice and premium, right? And the inside is white. So it looks hygienic. That's where your laundry actually touches the thing. And it's more easy to find things that you might drop in there. Small, I don't know, maybe you lose some coins or whatever. So it's also functional. And I did the same for the wooden one. And here I felt like a linen inside bag could be just lifted out, so you don't have to carry the heavy wooden one. And then I also did the same thing for the long version. So I feel like this looks already much more premium, right? Especially in black plastic. Wood, again, doesn't work all that well in my mind, right? But if we just also get to improve the handles, that's what I did here. I think this is like a really well working overall design. And I did the same thing with wood, but now it's bright wood. I think that matches most interiors better. And I think in that size also, the wood makes a little bit more sense, especially if you have a bag that you can lift out, right? So this is permanent, this is big, it's heavy, but it's also like sturdy. It's almost more like a shelf than a basket. And then we have the same idea applied to the plastic one. So I think these are now actually a little bit better than where I ended before, right? And then I just created some context shots just to make the output a little bit more clear. So now this is the conventional basket and this is the more premium version. I think it shows a little bit more quality, and especially in the more elongated shape, I feel like the comparison is even stronger. Here I also placed the wooden one in a Scandinavian interior place. So let me know, what do you think? Do you feel like they are more premium or not? And if so, why yes, why not? That was it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you were able to learn and understand the different ways to make something look more luxurious and apply the techniques to make even the cheapest product elevated. And again, don't try to use all of them at once like I did in this example, but strip it down. Less is more usually. Color is very impactful, the overall shaping, and then it's about precision and quality, right? So if you keep that in mind, I'm sure you will be succeeding, and wish you all the best. If you like what I do, then follow, like, and subscribe. And I'm curious what will be coming up next. I don't have an idea yet, so you have to stick around to find out. Thank you a lot.